Hey everybody, Dan here. I am so excited to be back with you. Before we jump into today's content, I just have a quick invitation. If you are a mission-driven entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur building something that you're passionate about, I want to connect with you. I'm working on an accelerator program, tentatively called Bootstrap Without Burnout, that's going to run the beginning of 2023. This accelerator is gathering a group of like-minded, mission-driven entrepreneurs to help each other build a business that we love, that we can love for the long haul, to avoid million-dollar mistakes, to avoid burnout, to make more money by doing the work that matters to us in a way that is sustainable. I get goosebumps talking about this. So if any of that is of interest to you, go to themeaningmovement.com/start. There you can take the burnout risk assessment, where you can get a score, find out how liable you are on your current path, at your current trajectory to experience burnout, and would love to talk to you about your business, what you're needing, and how I can help support you with this community that I'm building. themeaningmovement.com/start. Let's get into today's episode. I have the special guest, Kevin Basik. He is passionate about leadership and character development. Had such a fun conversation with him. Early in his career, he became fascinated with these questions of what causes people to make good choices versus bad choices under pressure, which brought him into studying around values and character development, all of those kinds of ideas. Today, he is the director of the National Medal of Honor Institute, which is committed to inspiring Americans at all levels to recognize the hero within them and to live and lead with character. He's a graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy, served 24 years in the Air Force, helping develop leaders of character everywhere within the organization, from entry-level cadets all the way through senior-level Pentagon leaders. He has a PhD in organizational behavior. I have a hard time saying that. He's an in-demand speaker, and he's just passionate about inviting people to the journey of crossing the gap, as he calls it, moment by moment, to live and lead in alignment with our values. I love this conversation. I don't think in terms of values that often. That's not the frame that I used to look at the world, but I felt like my conversation with Kevin just went so deep. I got to share my family's personal mantra, which you'll get to hear in this episode, and so many great takeaways. I felt like it was one of those conversations I could have just kept going with Kevin indefinitely. So let's go ahead and get on into it. Welcome to the Meaning Movement podcast. We know you want to build a stress-free life and business that gives you the financial freedom and lifestyle that you want. In order to do that, you have to eliminate the conflict between your work and the rest of your life. But the problem is, running a business is hard and requires sacrifice and commitment, leaving you feeling depleted, exhausted, and even burned out. But we believe that every entrepreneur deserves to recapture the motivation and energy they need to run their business. And that is what this show is all about. I'm your host, Dan Cumberland. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening, and let's go. Kevin, welcome to the Meaning Movement podcast. I'm just so excited to have you here with us.
Well, thanks, Dan. I appreciate this. I've been listening in on a number of your podcasts, and I get fired up, I get energized, and I get nourished. So it's an honor to be a part of this. Thank you for that.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much for that. I love that that's been helpful for you. The question I'd like to start with is, how do you begin to talk about the work that you do?
Oh, wow. I love to basically share with people that I help individuals and organizations get armed to live and lead with character. I'm going to focus on leadership, but you don't have to be in a formal leadership role to lead and influence people. And the way it keeps showing up for me is you're going to be tested. The test is showing up. So what can I do to help invite you to the journey I'm on? Just as a dude trying to get it right, as a husband, as a dad, as a leader, as a business leader. I'm inviting you to that journey. And I think there are some things that can help as we try and live and lead with character. So that's where I typically
I
go, and then we start the journey from there.
I love it. I don't for whatever reason, just the fact that you invite people, that word just kinda stood out to me. Like, I love that it's an invitation, right? That you're not forcing it on anybody, but you're opening the door and saying, "There's more here. There's something for everyone. So let's explore together," which I think is just a
And
really
if
beautiful framing.
Yeah, and if I'm the sage on the stage, that is not the case. We are all
Mm,
on our own journey, but there's certain handholds, there's certain waypoints that we can learn from each other. But if nothing else, I can share some lessons from the path I've walked so far that might help you on your path. So it's, as
I
a
love
good
that.
friend of mine, Kerry Granger, says, it's a mountain with no top. But by
Mm.
God, this is a mountain worth climbing. So we're all on the mountain.
That's a beautiful metaphor. I love that. Well, just to double click on that word of journeys and your journey, I'd love to just
Yeah.
kind of hear how'd you get here? Like what? And I mean, I know some of the just the very high level, but I'd love for you to
Yeah.
just share some of your major twists and turns along the way that's brought you to where you are today.
You bet. So I'm the youngest of six kids. I'm the baby of six. So one girl, five boys. And if anybody's the baby of a large family, you sort of get introduced into human dynamics pretty quickly. But I grew up. I got introduced to the military honestly through my older brothers who followed that path, and I followed some of their steps and came in through the Air Force Academy. And I will tell you this: anytime you come into any military branch, you're going to go through a boot camp, and the Air Force Academy has something called basic training. And rule number one is don't do anything to draw attention to yourself in any boot camp,
Yeah.
right? Well, in basic training, everyone is referred to as Basic Smith or Basic Jones or Basic Taylor. My last name is Basic. So I was basic at a time that you don't want any attention. So anyway, entered through the Air Force Academy. I really bought into the leadership development side of things. I was a behavioral science major. Human
Mm.
factors engineering is what the degree that I got. And I just dug that and went in the Air Force and was just blessed. A lot of opportunities they gave me to come back and teach leadership at the Air Force Academy. I taught at the Citadel, Air University, a number of places. And along that journey, I got some nerdy academic coverage too. I got a master's in industrial and organizational psychology, okay, focused on small team leadership, and later a PhD in organizational behavior. And at that's a management degree. It's in the College of Business, but I knew my follow-on assignment after that degree was to go back to the Air Force's Center for Character and Leadership Development, and I dig the values-based leadership thing.
Mm.
I've seen just the power of that when people are paying attention to it, and the cost when people are not. So on that journey, I got to sort of operate at all different levels. My last assignment was at the Pentagon, working with senior leaders at the Pentagon to help foster the identity of commitment and the, the professional identity.
Yeah.
What is it that causes people to do the right thing, and how do we prevent them from doing the wrong thing? And buy into what we're trying to be about. So that's why values coming to life and all that is so important. So I got out of the Air Force after 24 years, and I had been going around speaking and sharing and teaching on these values based principles. And a lot of people said, "Hey, dude, we don't mind if you're in uniform or out of uniform. Would you come and continue to talk to us?" So I started my own
Mm.
company, Basic Insight, to just do that again, to invite people
Yeah.
on the journey to live and lead with character. And after about 5 years, I got tapped on the shoulder to help with just something with an amazing mission. And I find myself now in the role of the director of the new National Medal of Honor Institute. So think Leadership Institute, but it's leadership, it's character development for youth, it's thought leadership in the areas of the virtues associated with the Medal of Honor. So I'm there. We're
Wow.
just creating that structure and that vision, and we take the powerful stories of the Medal of Honor and we create two bridges. The first bridge is what virtues are evident and obvious there. It's courage and commitment and passion and sacrifice and resilience and all that. And then the second bridge is how can that apply in my life? How
Mm.
do I take that? Because I'm not going to be in Afghanistan. I'm not going to be leading a troop or battalion. But man, I'm going through a battle in my own life with my teenage kids, or my relationship here, or trying to start up this company or pivot in this direction. Maybe, just maybe, there's something we can borrow from those stories and apply into our life. So that's the journey I'm on right now.
I love it. Man, what a journey. And so many things I think I want to just kind of touch on and maybe just kind of fill out the picture a little bit because the
Sure.
things that we're talking about, I think you and I can agree, like we know like they're really important ideas of,
Mhm.
character and integrity
Yeah.
but like when I look at, the just the high level of what you were doing in throughout your career, really focused on that, like what does that look like on the day to day? Like
Yeah.
how do you work with an organization? And I guess maybe just to give like fill out the picture of like some of the different roles that you had within the Air Force where you were, focused on these concepts. Like what is how does that like how does what's the downstream effect? Like what are you doing on a day-to-day basis? Like how does it play out?
Yeah, so day to day basis is some of the roles. It was how do we create experiences, immersive workshops and programs and opportunities to connect people with here's your wheelhouse with what matters to them, what's driving them, what are
Yeah.
you aiming at,
Mhm.
and when we talk about certain professions or communities of honor, you say, hey, if you want to be a part of this, here's what we're up to. Here's what matters. So part of the day to day was to connect with people and go, let's ground ourselves. What is your stand?
Mm.
What do you stand
Yeah.
for? What do you stand from? And let's
Yeah.
get clear on that because you, as a leader, your job is to bring that to life, is to demonstrate you're
Mm.
actually serious about it. A, by how you're living, what you're reinforcing, what you're holding people accountable to. Um, so the first stop in that is what is the sort of the North Star or the point that you stand from? And then what are the obstacles in our organization, in our relationships, in our life that make that hard? I know
Yeah.
you've talked in the past about fear,
Mhm.
failure,
Yep.
insecurity, mindset. So
Mhm.
we're going to meet you in those places as well, because those can be some of the obstacles that cause us to drift from who we're trying to be as a company, as a family, as a father. Um, but if you don't know what that starting point is, that's key. So we start there. So a lot of workshops, activities, coaching conversations, coaching programs. And at the Air Force Academy, you've got students, so you're trying to engage them and the faculty to get that right. Later on, at
Yeah.
the Pentagon level, it's going out and meeting people in their organizations and going, all right, let's meet with the frontline folks, and we're going to
Mm.
talk about the usual cast of characters. We're going to talk about trust. We're going to talk
Mm.
about psychological safety. We're going to talk about walking the values we espouse, and what happens when we don't, and language that gets into our culture that can pull us toward or move us away from who we're trying to be. So it's really fostering reflection, conversations, clarity, and things like that. So that's day to day.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm in the office, sometimes I'm out on the road, sometimes we're doing workshops or programs or
Yeah.
conferences and that sort of thing.
It sounds like fun. Sounds like just a lot of, very dynamic and engaging, roles that you've been in, which is just, it fun just like that's just how I feel like as I think about it. Like that's just like it just sounds like like just every day sounds like just a joy, which is I'm sure
I
it
tell
has
you
its
what,
downs along the way. But it's
yeah, I
just
mean,
yeah,
sometimes people either don't quite get it or resonate, or sometimes maybe I missed
yeah,
the mark, and there's that whole thing. But my going in point in almost every conversation is, I promise this will be relevant to you. There's no
yes.
way it can't be relevant because you get to lay this over the top of your own life and go,
Mm,
hey, with regard to
mm,
creating trust. Maybe that person there is going, it's in my relationship with my mother-in-law. This person over here is going, I'm the brand new leader in this team, and I've got to create trust there. Somebody else is going,
yeah.
I inherited a broken organization and I've got to rebuild trust. So the same
Mm,
topics, you just get to plug into what it looks like in your life. And I love that
yeah.
because, man, again, I learn how to do it, in my own life by listening to other people struggle through their battles.
I love it. I love it. How much of your work with your speaking is
Mhm.
focused on military folk and how much is outside business and the civilian audiences?
Yeah. So now when I'm, in this new role with the Medal of Honor Institute, um,
Yeah.
the stories are all military because it's the nation's highest honor for valor in combat. But what we want to do is invite folks. I think we've absolutely hit the mark. If a lot of the people in our programs have no background in the military,
Yeah.
We want to
Yep.
invite folks there. We want to engage with K through 12 kids out across America that aren't in the military, may have no exposure to the military. These days, they probably haven't. So
Mm.
rewind the clock just a little bit. When I was just in business for myself, I would say about
Yeah.
70% of my clients were military. And I'd speak to
Yep.
special forces, and I speak to the new one-star generals in the Air Force. And so I'd have these recurring sort of programs I get invited to speak in. But now in the Medal of Honor Institute, it's blue skies, man. We want everybody
Yeah.
to show up and explore this with us and together. And we're just happen to be pulling out military stories to
Yes.
advance. And here's what we want. We want to inspire, we want to equip, and we want to connect people around these virtues as they go off into life. That's the goal.
I love it. I love it. And then just related to that, I'm curious how much the audience, like when I think of all your experience of, especially at the academy and military, like you're a part of, if from the outsider, right? So it's like
Mhm.
one of the biggest, most organized and structured machines in the world. And then like from the outside, it's like that it feels like such a different life,
Mhm.
as a civilian, and that may or may not be true. But I'm curious how much do you have to tailor the message to the audience, and how different is how different do folks relate to the content as civilians versus as people who've
Oh,
been there and
what
who
a
are living in that real structured, like, yeah, just a different mindset I think that comes with it.
Yeah, so the lens we're going to enter through is going to be in leadership. All right. So you're in a
Yeah.
leadership role and what matters there. And here's
Yeah.
what I found, it doesn't matter
Hmm.
who's in the room, whether
Yeah.
we've got senior leaders, CEOs, and corporate leaders, or we've got military leaders, or we got special forces folks, all the way down the organization. For leadership to be effective, you got to have certain things, and they keep bubbling up. Here's one of the questions I ask in almost all my workshops is, and people go on their phones. We use this tool so their phones can be a voting tool, so it goes up anonymously on the big screen. And I go,
Love
all
it.
right, here's the deal. What's the rest of the sentence for you? If you are going to successfully lead me, you had better blank. If you're going to lead somebody as impressive as me, because I got other options, but you want to pull it off with me, here's what you better get right. I don't need the list, but what's at the top of your mind today? And the same things keep bubbling up. There's about 5 buckets that just consistently show up. And I will tell you this, the top 3 buckets happen to all relate to trust. But in order, the third most common response is people go, if you're going to lead me, you better be competent. You better
Mm.
know what you need to know for your job and be a student of your craft. Don't tell me you're a master of your
Yep.
craft. You're always a student of your craft. But part of confidence or competence is also you need to be competent to make the call that falls to you, make the decision, right?
Yeah.
And own it. Blame is never a leadership virtue. There's competence in obviously job execution, but also competence in communication. If you know how to do your job, but you can't articulate where we're going or what the vision is, it's going to frustrate the heck out of you. That's the third most common response. Second most common response is, if you're going to lead me, you better demonstrate you care about me and the people on this team. So that's why you said vulnerability. That helps with me concluding that you care. When you know me and know my story, when you are willing to be vulnerable and acknowledge you may have gotten it wrong, or you don't know, or you're sorry, man, that's a strength builder in this relationship. And people go, oh, the leaders in my life who I think just crushed it and got it right, they were sincere, they were authentic, they were imperfect, and they were okay with that, and they allowed me to be imperfect. So that's second most common thing. Again, no matter who I'm talking to, the number one most common and most important thing people say is, if you're going to lead me, you had better lead by example. You show me what right looks like, because I'm going to hold you up to the standard you're espousing, the standard you're holding me to, the values and virtues you're kind of are assigned based on the role you're in. Hey, you're my boss. You shouldn't talk like that. Even though you didn't say that was part of your value set, dude, that should be. So I'm going to hold you against that. And if you are out of integrity with that, there's a bill. And that's where my heart early on in my dissertation and all that, this idea of behavioral integrity just became the goggles I couldn't take off. I just
Yeah.
got polluted with the importance of that in my own life and watching other people, because that is the fast track to getting it right or wrong with leadership.
Mm. And so when you say behavioral integrity, I think of that like as the opposite. Well, not the opposite. It's what you're talking about there, leading by example. I would define behavioral integrity as living in the way that is in alignment with who you say you are and the way that you say you want to be
Yep.
living. Is that how you
Yes.
define it, or do you have a
Yeah.
different working definition? What are
Yeah,
your
so I
words?
got lit up on this when I was in my PhD program, because there's a great researcher out of Cornell named Tony Simons, and he's first sort of operationalized this idea and said, when people look at their leader, they're going to ascribe this value. Am I seeing a
Mm.
consistent pattern of alignment between your words and your actions, the espoused values and the actual actions? Promise made is promise kept, all those things. But how it really lands for me, and where I like to go in my conversation with it, is the behavioral thing brings it from this big, broad brushstroke of you either have integrity or you don't. It's just inherent. Come on, man. It's a moment to moment thing. And
Yes.
all of us have had moments where we've just been off the bubble on our diet, our faith, our
Mm.
standards, and all that. So in the moment, that's why I like to conceptualize behavioral integrity it's the moment to moment test. How you doing? Because in this moment, you said this was important to you. In this moment, I'm paying attention to whether it looks like it or not.
Yeah.
And if you are out of integrity with your kids, for example, you say, I want to be, as a dad, I want to be somebody who's present and engaged. I want to be a dad
Yes.
who's patient. Well, Lord knows you're a good dude. And I'm sure you're patient a lot of times, but there are times when you're not. And in those moments when you are out of integrity with that commitment in your heart to those little people, there's a bill.
Yes.
This moment, it bothers me because I know I'm better than that, and I know there's a consequence when I drift from who I'm trying to be. So
Mm.
to me, behavioral integrity is just that moment to moment test you got to keep paying attention to.
Yeah.
And Tony Simons has done the research to go, let me show you, in a quantified measure, in an organization, on a 5-point scale, when people look at their boss and they if you can move that needle on perceived behavioral integrity an eighth of a point on a 5-point scale, it ended up translating to $250,000 in profit, in this case, per hotel per year. Just that little shift
Wow. Wow.
gives you that much benefit. But brother, that little shift in the negative direction, buckle up, because there's a bill coming the other direction. So it works in our relationships too.
We'll get right back to our conversation, but I wanted to give a quick shout out to our sponsor. This episode in this season of the podcast is brought to you by 923.co, a web and mobile app development team that I have been working directly with for more than a year, building VideoSnap. VideoSnap.io, if you don't know, is the software that I built to repurpose long-form speech-based content, like this podcast, into short-form, viral-ready videos. Think TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Reels, etc. If you're making content and you want to be found in the algorithms, you should be using VideoSnap. I've been building directly with 923, and they are a phenomenal team with a strong track record of building high-quality apps. They've built more than 50 apps. Those apps have gone on to do more than $1 billion for their clients, which is incredible. I'm also now contributing to their team in a product strategy role, which means if you have a dream that you want to realize with software, not only should you talk to 923 because they are so good at software, but I could help you directly build that with them. Go to 923.co, all spelled out, 9networee.co, and find out more. Thanks so much. Now back to the show. That's so good. So good. And just, I think, translating it to me as a dad, I mean, that's, like we were talking about before I hit the record button, it's very, very much my reality of a 6.5, 4, and 2-year-old. And I do try to be a good dad, a patient dad, a kind, loving. But then there are times when I yell at my kids, and when I lose it, and I
You're
say
that
things that I
guy.
regret, and like.
So am I.
Yeah. And so I guess what I'm saying is like that's where like that example just really took it down a layer, right? Like from a conversation here, like, oh yeah, this feel like I feel this in my gut, like that I need this. I'm curious. So what are the tools that
Yeah.
you offer for, like, okay, I can see where I'm out of alignment. I
Right.
can see where, I don't yell at my kids all the time, but there are
Sure.
times when I lose my temper, and it happens more often than I want it to. Um, and so just use that as the example. Now, then what?
Yeah. So this is a great point, and this is where the what moves to the so what to the now what. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the techniques, I'll give you one example of a technique that absolutely has powerful impact in my life, and I share with other people, is this thing called an eavesdrop. Okay. And it's really just a reflection of a letter. Over the course of my whole career, I've sat down whenever I make um, big transition moves. It doesn't have to be, but I sit down and I'll write a letter to myself.
Mm.
And some of it is just reflecting, okay, so I've just finished that season of my life. I'm about to start a new one, but what's my takeaway from this last season? So there's some reflection.
Yeah.
I noticed I'm good at this. Ooh, I noticed I don't do this very well, or I consistently keep making this mistake, and I don't like that. So
Mm.
I gotta take a stand from that. I gotta commit to not that, in addition to leveraging my strengths. So in the eavesdrop letter, there's some just sort of assessment and inventory. But then the actual eavesdrop portion acknowledges that we have seasons in our life. Man, you're in a season right now. It's a window, and what your kids and your wife and your podcast listeners and your team, what they need from you in this season is different than what the next season will hold, right?
Yeah.
So you got to meet them there and feed them what they're hungry for. All right, well, there's
Mm.
value in going, all right, in the season, what are they hungry for? Your
Yeah.
wife needs you to listen a certain way and be present a certain way and be involved a certain way that may be different than when you guys were newlyweds, right?
Yeah.
So what's important is to say, okay, in this season, let me identify who are the key stakeholders. It can be
Mm.
actual individuals, can be groups of people, and you say, all right, in the next 1 to 2 years, they're going to conclude something about how I did in this season interacting with them. So you
Yes.
break this season up into specific relationships,
Mm.
audiences or stakeholders, and then identify what do they need, what are they hungry for, and in that process, what do I tend to screw up in this relationship? I want to
Mm.
shine a light on that and go, I got to be better than that to get this right. And the reason it's called an eavesdrop is I have the format I use is very sort of conversational. You're eavesdropping in on them at the end of the 2 years.
I love that.
As if they didn't know you were listening, and they're
Yes.
saying, somebody said, "Oh, Dan's your husband? So what's that like?" And your wife
Oh, so
goes,
good.
"Oh, seriously? Let me tell you." And here's the question. What's the Hall of Fame quote you would love her to love to hear her say
Mm.
about you? If she didn't know you were listening. And you got to unpack that. It
Yeah.
usually starts, the technique is it usually starts with the bumper sticker just to get the juices flowing. It's one of those big, hairy, audacious phrases. You want your wife to say, "We've never been so in love. And I think other wives are jealous of the guy I got." I mean, okay, so that's bold. That's you just sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
shooting
Yeah.
for the fence. All right, so then the question is, what must you have done in order for her to say that? And now you start to
Mm.
unpack it. Man, he listens to me. He squints with his ears. He listens to me with his whole heart, and I so appreciate that. All right, guess what, brother? You're now on the hook for listening to her and being present in a non-judgmental way, or else she never says that. Now she
Yeah.
says the way he contributes to this family, the way he makes me feel. Okay, you know what's important to her. So for you to put that out there and put it in her language, it would bother you if she chose not to say that, wouldn't it? All
Mm.
right. So then,
Mm.
so I've got one of these just paragraphs for each one. I've got,
I love it.
like, my mom and dad are going through a journey right now. My dad's in memory care. My mom and dad have been married 65 years. Their relationship is my mom's whole identity. So my mom's still,
Wow.
present, but my dad's, we're losing him.
Oh.
Well, in this season, what does it look like for me to get it right with the two of them, especially her?
Mm.
How do I honor their relationship, them? What is she hungry for? So I spend some time unpacking that. And now, as I fly down there in a week and a half, it's the test. I mean, it's the test now
Yeah.
on how I call her and how I can engagement.
Mm.
So this is a technique. It's simply define the season by the relationships and what they need from the leader in you. And then it's a moment to moment test as to whether you bring that to life.
I love that. It's such a powerful tool to take it out of I don't know, out of the present and into a creative exercise, and then also that it's not a conversation that you're having but you're overhearing, like kind of takes it out of yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so
So
just
it's
sounds like a
aspirational, but there's
fantastic
still a
tool.
fence
Yeah.
around it. It's not, you're not
Yes.
writing your obituary because I got the rest of my life
Yes.
to be that guy, right? So
Yeah.
it's in the season we're in right now, how you play in this. And as a father of teenagers, one of the things in there is I want my daughters at the end of this season to say he focused on what was right more than what was wrong. And that's in there because I tend to screw that one up. And
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy. And I see the
Ugh,
consequences. I
that
see it
hits
in their
home.
eyes when I go straight toward what's not right in this. And I haven't even celebrated all the goodness that they brought to the table.
Ugh,
So
yes.
it's a kick in the gut when you're
Yes.
out of integrity in
It
this
is.
moment. But when you
Yeah.
are, it doesn't make you a bad person. It just means you got a choice. You can either let it
Yeah.
ride or you fight like hell to get back into integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And then, keep on moving. Another test is coming.
Yeah. Well, I think it brings an exercise like that I think it brings into focus these things that we think and I think especially feel, but we haven't necessarily taken the time and space to articulate, and puts it into words that then we can, once it's in words, like we're more accountable to it and can interact with it more.
Right.
But then it also just brings so much more intention and focus into the time that we have and the actions that we take in the present. Just both with
Right now,
examples with
this moment.
with your daughters, or going and visiting your parents. Like, you show up differently because you've done that work of like pre-visioning, if that's a word,
Mm-hmm.
how you want it to go and what you want the outcomes to be. So I think it's just a beautiful process that you're inviting people to. I'm curious, how often should folks be engaging in an exercise like that?
It feels like when the season has shifted a little bit, maybe one is consistent. So that audience. I mean, my wife is obviously always going to be a sort of a stakeholder in the audience.
Yeah.
But when things have shifted, and a daughter moves out of the house and goes to college, okay, what does that look like? Or she's no longer working for that company; she's working from home, and our relationship, we're in each other's chili a little bit more. So it seems like anytime one of the relationships shifts, it's worth going, all right, what's the target that I'm aiming at as a person now? And here's the key. You want an accountability exercise. Once you write that out and go, these are who matter. These are the people that matter to me. Here's who I'm trying to be for them. To share that with those people. It's interesting because when I go, this is who I'm trying to be for you. First of all, here's who I'm trying to be for all these other people. If you can help me with any of this, I love it because this is what I'm trying to be. But does this matter to you? And in some cases, though, like you're putting more emphasis on that. I'll tell you what matters to me even more is that little thing you got there.
Yes.
So, you want to meet them where they're at. But it's a moment to moment thing. And even with the Medal of Honor exploration, it simply reminds us that even ordinary people in the moment can do extraordinary things. And we want to be extraordinary for these people in our lives. So we got proof that it is possible to do something like that and face fear. Lord knows I'm facing fear in my normal life. So I got to push through the fear to be who I'm trying to be.
Yeah.
And maybe other people can help me with that.
I love it. And I think that, just sharing that with people, like it feels vulnerable. It feels a little bit scary, but also like just adds a whole nother layer of, I want to say accuracy. I don't know if that's the right word, but like making sure that your goals for your relationship are in alignment with with the other stakeholders, with the people that you're thinking about, and bringing intentionality to those relationships, which I think is
it also brings up a whole nother level of accountability. You put it out there, and I invite CEOs. Here's a technique I do with CEOs. I say, all right, I'm going to give you one of your audiences. Okay, your audience is your frontline staff, your senior staff that you are leading. And if you don't get that right, it's going to trickle down through the organization. So that's your audience. What two words, let's just make it two words. What two words capture the spirit of how you want to be seen as having lived and led, right? Okay, so they spend some time thinking about it, and it might be the word champion. I want that, or I want elevated. They come up with some good words. Okay, now turn to the person next to you and explain to them what you mean by that and the spirit of it. And it looks like what? So they get fired up about that. These two words for my team, that's how I want them to see me. I brought this up now. I say, all right, now grab your phones and take a picture of your Post-it note. Okay. And take a picture. I say, text this to whoever orchestrates your staff meetings and say, just make this the first slide of my next staff meeting. And like, wait, what? And I'm like, hey, you just said this is who you're trying to be for them. So here's how this goes. It's this simple.
So good.
Staff meeting starts and you go, hey, we had this guy come in and we talked to explore with us, the impact that we're trying to make as leaders. These two words are what I'd love to bring to life in what we got going on. These are the two words. And I say, you got to spend about 20 minutes or 20 seconds on each one going, here's what I mean by that word. And I'm trying to bring this out. Okay, back to our staff meeting. Click. Yeah. That's all you have to do. It'll take you about maybe a minute and a half. But as soon as you hit click and move on to your staff meeting, everybody in that room is going to go, all right, let's see. Because I tell you, I wouldn't use that word right now. It is now game on. And it is your opportunity as a leader to bring that to life moment by moment based on how you live and lead and interact with them. So it's an accountability, super button.
So good. I love it. My family, with my kids, we have this, we call them our family mantras. It's just like a handful of things that I like my wife and I have talked about. We've written these out, like that we aspire to be as a family, and we say them together, like, call and response periodically. And I've always in my mind, that's been about teaching our kids, building our culture as a family.
Yes.
But I think like having this conversation is really added another layer to me. Like it's really also accountability to me and my kids, and for me to live into not just who I'm asking them to be, but also for how I'm showing up with them, which I think is not an aspect of it that I've really thought about as much as more of like the direction that I'm hoping they're going to grow, but it's also like this is a call to action for me and a call to accountability for me. So
you're hitting on a big deal here. The idea, the power of a battle cry. DJ and I, he calls it a war cry. I call it a battle cry. There's these mantras, and they show up sometimes as wrist tattoos and phrases people go back to because they energize us or they orient us or give us some guidance into tough moments. Would you give me an example of one of your mantras for your family?
Yeah, I was like, I should just pull it up. I could just read it. It feels vulnerable, but I'd love to I'll just read it. It's like, maybe it's like 5-6 sentences. It says, "We Team Cumberland believe in each other. We know that God is with us and for us, and we are with each other and for each other. When one of us wins, we all win. We are kind, brave, and honest. We know that everything is figure outable and that small actions add up to big things. When we fail, we try again." Man, I get emotional about these.
Yeah. See, hey, there's a reason for that. Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah. When hard things happen, we choose how we respond. We don't take ourselves too seriously. We laugh and have fun. We walk together. This is a line that we always change and usually say something funny. Right now it's written, we give mom and dad all the peanut butter candy, which is just it's usually just some funny reference to something that's happened recently. We love life. We love others, and we love our team. And then always at that point, we look at each other and say, we love our team. And then the last line is, "Watch out, world, here we come."
Oh my gosh, what a gift you've given your kids and your family. And what that is, that's your stand. I mean, that's you saying, all right, it looks like this. Now, when we aren't kind to each other, when we do keep the peanut butter candy to ourselves, when we do that, we're out of integrity with what we said. We're not bad people, but we're better than that, or we know what we're aiming at here. First of all, Dan,
That's,
if that's not posted on your website someplace,
yeah.
you're wrong, because that's a gift to model what you're doing in your family and to
Mm.
go, you know why? Oh, I'm so glad we're talking about this. The fact that you just shared that with me and all the people who listen to this, you know what happens? People will now rally around you and they
Mm.
go, okay, I get you now, man. I get you. And as a matter
Yeah.
of fact,
Yeah.
I've wanted to do that too. And I found something that helps. So let me offer this to you. You have now a tribe of people who can help you be what you just said you want to be.
I love that.
And those battle cries are great. And sometimes people will go, I love that. Here's how it showed up. Same concept in my life. And as
Yeah.
you move into a new season, guess what you're going to do? You're going to shift your mantras a little bit.
Yep.
And maybe
Yep.
when the teenage years show up, you adopt one of the ones Jen and I have used just in
Yeah.
little moments was,
Yeah.
we're going to love our way through this.
Mm.
And, you know,
So good.
if we don't know, if it feels like we're swinging in the dark sometimes or something's not working, here's what we know. We're going to love our way through this. We're never going to parent in anger, and we're going to love our way through this.
Mm.
And it's that deep. We can connect the dots easily to some of the things in your life, but the season just shifts and says, here's what it looks like
Yes.
now. So
Yeah.
you get it, you see it, and you know that the reason you get emotional is because you want it so bad, man. You want to be that, and you want that for them. And it's a
Yes. So
gift.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So much. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. I get all the feelings. Yeah. This is just such good stuff. I feel like, and yeah, I mean, for people listening, I mean, one thing I guess I want to say to listeners is, I offer my, attempt at a family mantra as, as a starting place for, if that resonates with folks that are listening, take that and run with it. I'll post it. I'll post it in the show notes.
I will
But I'm
tell you this,
curious.
Dan, to go back to your first question, though,
Yeah.
people in the military will appreciate your mantra as much as people
Mhm.
in the corporate world.
Yeah. I love that.
Human beings show up and go, I needed what you just offered me. So
Yes.
please put that
Yes.
out there. It's a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm curious if you have anything else, for people that are listening and maybe responding to this concept, like where do they start in like thinking about these ideas? And I think your eavesdrop exercise, I think, is a
Yeah.
really I would say that's probably the best starting place. But I'm
Yeah.
curious if there's more that you would add, just even as a like just real moment of application, or giving some homework,
Yeah.
like, so someone who's listening to this can be like, okay, I'm gonna hit the pause button, or after this interview wraps up, and I'm gonna go get out a pen and paper and do something about it.
Yeah. So let's just connect the dots back to what we've talked about so far
Yeah.
is pick sort of a context in your life. Okay. With regard to my work team, or with regard to my
Yeah.
family, or just myself
So
and my
good.
faith and my health or whatever.
Mm.
What do I stand from? And what do I stand for? Just to distinguish
Yeah.
that. And a stand
Mm.
from can be, what do I need to let go of? What do I need to stop giving energy to in my life? What do I need to commit to not doing anymore? It's maybe part of a habit. So to say, I know I'd be a better version of myself if I recommitted to this, and if I deliberately stood from this. That
Nice.
can add some clarity for folks, and then the testable
Mm.
moments show up a little bit clearer, and you've got some strength. So the stand for, stand from approach is helpful. Another thing, ironically, dude, you teed this up beautifully, is just visit some of the battle cries in your life, the mantras that
Mm.
you go to that give you strength, that remind you of what's important, that help keep things in perspective or give you resilience. Sometimes capturing those, you realize there's themes in here. Control what you can control. Maybe I need to remind myself of that because I get so anxious about stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to grab onto things that are outside my purview. But sometimes mantras remind us to take inventory of the blessings we've got in our life, the
Mm.
resources we've got around us we're not using,
Yes.
which is contributing to anxiety.
Yeah.
And if you share some of your mantras, it's amazing how many people go, "Ooh, I got one for you. It's on posted on my refrigerator," which usually means you got a good one
Yes.
there. We do hard things. That's Brene Brown. Her family says
Yeah.
that, and man, I know you get that because that's basically one of
Yes.
your mantras.
Yes.
So You can borrow these battle cries, you can share them, you can shape them, but they exist for a reason. And it's because
Mm.
human beings need to tap into those to help guide them. So go to mantras, identify your stand, and then
Yep.
be aware of the testable moments where you got to prove. You say this is important to you, prove
Yep.
it. It's going to be hard.
Show up. Mm. So good. Thank you for that. And I hope people listening will take that to heart and spend some time on that. I would love to hear from listeners. I want to hear your mantras. If you're listening and this is, responding, your battle cries, like what are those words that you come back to with a phrase, the word, whatever it looks like. So, go to our show notes and post them there or
Please.
reach out to me and Kevin on social media. We'll have links to everything in the show notes. But I would love, to take this conversation, keep this conversation going with our
Yeah.
listeners just to see, because I'm sure there's things that people are thinking about that I would say here and say, yes, I want to add that. I want to add that in to what I say with my family, what I do with my family, and who I'm trying to be. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I
And it
hope
helps people
listeners
in
will
the
respond.
topics that you talk about in your show.
Yeah.
Help me
Yeah.
with courage. Help me with
Yes.
focus. Help me with that. So,
Yes.
I mean, I heard a great one. When it's this bad, you can either be bitter or be better. I mean, that's just reminds us we've got a
So
choice
good.
on our attitude. So,
Yeah.
yeah, fill the show notes. And again, those
Yes.
are gifts that you give to each other.
I love it. I love it. Well, this has just been so much fun. I feel like this time has gone by so fast, and I'm so sad that we're at this point. But we are coming up on time, and this again is just one of these conversations. I feel like we could just keep going indefinitely. It's just, I think there's so much camaraderie, so much similarity in the way we think about these things. So thank you for sharing it with me, with listeners. I know that everyone listening will have taken so much to heart, in this. And so thank you. It's a gift.
Well, hey, this means a lot to me. So thanks for sharing what you shared. I mean, your mantras.
Yeah.
I look forward to rereading them on your website.
Thank you so much. For folks that want to connect with you or follow along with your work, is there anything you'd like to invite people to?
Yeah, well, first of all, I invite people to just keep an eye on the National Medal of Honor Museum, which is sort of one of the main elements of what we're doing. The National Medal of Honor Museum. It's an amazing experience there. And then as part of that, the National Medal of Honor Institute is profiled inside the museum website. So just keep an eye on us there and see opportunities. We'll be posting stuff as well. I've got a YouTube page, just Kevin Basik, just Basik. And I've got some YouTube small videos and things like that might trigger some ideas and thoughts about living in alignment with your values and commitments. And then please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to keep the conversation going. There's even a cool LinkedIn group that I chair, which is the Courage Forum. And we just sort of explore the virtue of courage, because courage is every virtue at its testing point, and it's at that gap. You're either in or out of integrity with what you're trying to be on the other side of the gap.
So good. I love it. I'll make sure to link up to your site, to the National Medal of Honor Museum website, and everything in your LinkedIn as well in the show notes. Is the museum open? I wasn't sure when it looked like from the website that it's in concept mode, but maybe
the ground has been broken. Matter of fact, this morning they poured the first huge footer for this amazing structure.
Exciting.
But the museum has phenomenal resources in there to just sort of get you exploring. But one of the tabs inside the museum website is the Institute, and it too is growing and changing. Yeah. But we'd love for you to join us on that journey. It's scheduled. The museum's scheduled to open up in 2024, but we're already this November. We're doing our first leadership development program through the Institute.
So awesome. Well, it looks like just really exciting and important work, and so really excited, that you're a part of it. Excited to point people in that direction. So, thank you again, Kevin, for coming on the show, and just been a really great conversation.
Well, thanks for having me, and thank you for what you do for people. You put some good stuff out there that they can leverage to be better. So, thank you.
Thanks. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching and listening. You can find links to everything that we talked about in our show notes at themeaningmovement.com. basik.com. If you haven't left a rating or review wherever you're watching or listening, please take a moment to do that. On YouTube, you can hit that thumbs up button. On most of the podcast catchers, you can leave some sort of star rating plus a few words, and that is how people find this show. It's particularly helpful on Apple, but you can also do it on Spotify, Amazon, and a bunch of other podcast catchers. Our music is by Tom Roram. Our artwork is by Eleazar Ruiz. We'll be back with you shortly. Thanks so much.